Imagine waking up every morning knowing that your job could kill you. Not just in a my boss is a nightmare kind of way, but in a one wrong move and it's all over kind of way. Throughout history, people have risked their lives in ways that seem almost unthinkable today. But here's the twist. Many of these jobs weren't just necessary, they were respected, even coveted. Some paid well, some offered social status, and some were simply the only option for survival. But all of them had one thing in common. Danger was part of the job description. So would you survive the most dangerous jobs in history? Let's find out. Let's start with a job that's as old as civilization itself, the Roman gladiator. When you think of gladiators, you might picture Hollywood's version, muscular men in shining armor, fighting for glory in the Colosseum. But the reality was far grimmer. Most gladiators were slaves or prisoners of war, forced into brutal combat for the entertainment of the masses. The average lifespan of a gladiator? Just a few years if they were lucky. Every fight was a gamble with death, and even the best could fall to a single mistake. Yet for some, the arena offered a strange kind of hope. Win enough battles and you might earn your freedom. But the odds were never in your favor. Now let's jump forward in time to the Middle Ages where another deadly profession awaited. The medieval knight. Sure, knights had armor and swords, but that didn't make them invincible. In fact, the battlefield was a chaotic, terrifying place. Arrows rained from above, swords clashed, and disease swept through camps. Knights faced not only the enemy, but also the constant threat of infection from even minor wounds. And if you were captured, ransom was possible, but torture and execution were just as likely. The chivalric code might sound noble, but in practice, it was a brutal, bloody business. But not all dangerous jobs involved combat. Some were about survival in the harshest environments on Earth. Take the Arctic whaler of the 18th and 19th centuries. Imagine spending months or even years at sea, surrounded by ice, hunting massive whales with nothing but harpoons and courage. The pay was good, but the risks were enormous. Ships could be crushed by ice, storms could sink you in minutes, and a single misstep on the slippery deck could mean a quick, icy death. And if you did manage to catch a whale, the real danger began. Boiling down the blubber into oil was a fiery, explosive process. Many whalers never made it home. Speaking of fire, let's talk about the Victorian chimney sweep. In 19th century England, children as young as 5 were sent up narrow, soot-choked chimneys to clean them. The work was suffocating, filthy, and incredibly dangerous. Many children got stuck and suffocated, while others developed chimney sweep's cancer, one of the first occupational cancers ever identified. The job was so deadly that it eventually led to major reforms in child labor laws. But for decades, it was just another way to survive in the slums of London. Now picture yourself in ancient China, working as a Great Wall builder. The Great Wall is one of the most impressive feats of engineering in history, but it came at a terrible cost. Workers toiled in extreme heat and cold, hauling massive stones up steep mountainsides. Food was scarce and disease was rampant. Many laborers died on the job, their bodies buried within the wall itself. It's estimated that hundreds of thousands perished during its construction. For the emperors, the wall was a symbol of power. For the workers, it was a death sentence. But let's not forget the miners of the Industrial Revolution. Coal powered the world, but mining it was a nightmare. Miners, often children, crawled through pitch-black tunnels, breathing in toxic dust and facing the constant threat of cave-ins, explosions, and flooding. The pay was meager, but for many families, it was the only way to survive. The dangers were so severe that entire communities could be wiped out by a single accident. Yet the world above ground depended on their labor. But perhaps no job was more feared than that of the plague doctor during the Black Death. Dressed in their iconic beaked masks, these doctors braved the streets of plague-ridden cities trying to treat the sick and dying. The mask, filled with aromatic herbs, was supposed to protect them from bad air. But it did little against the real killer, the bacteria that caused the plague. Most plague doctors died within weeks of starting their work. But for some, the promise of high pay and a sense of duty was enough to face the risk. Contrast these jobs with today's world, where workplace safety is a given for most people. We have regulations, protective gear, and emergency procedures. But for most of history, danger was just part of the job. There were no safety nets, no insurance policies, and no guarantees. If you wanted to eat, you had to work, and sometimes that meant risking everything. So, would you survive? Imagine yourself as a gladiator, stepping into the arena with nothing but a sword and your wits. Or as a chimney sweep crawling through darkness, lungs burning with every breath. Or as a plague doctor, walking into a house where everyone inside is already dead. It's easy to say you'd be brave, but the truth is most of us would struggle to last a single day. But here's the thing. The people who did these jobs weren't superheroes. They were ordinary men, women, and children doing what they had to do to survive. Their stories are a testament to human resilience and a reminder of how far we've come. Let's move from the darkness of the mines and the plague-ridden streets to the dazzling yet deadly world of the high-rise steelworker in early 20th century America. Picture the iconic black and white photos. Men perched on narrow steel beams, hundreds of feet above the city, eating lunch with their legs dangling over the void. No harnesses, no safety nets, just nerves of steel and a steady hand. These workers built the skylines of New York and Chicago, racing to complete the tallest buildings in the world. The pay was good, but the risks were staggering. A single misstep meant a fatal fall. The wind could whip you off balance, and the steel beams could become slick with rain or ice. Yet, for many immigrants, this was a ticket to a better life, a chance to earn more in a week than they could back home in a month. The camaraderie was legendary, but so was the danger. Every day, workers would see friends and colleagues fall to their deaths, and yet they returned, day after day, driven by hope and necessity. Now, let's travel to the open seas with the deep-sea diver of the 19th and early 20th centuries. Before modern scuba gear, divers wore heavy brass helmets and lead boots, connected to the surface by a single air hose. Their job? Salvage shipwrecks, repair underwater structures, and recover lost treasures. The dangers were everywhere. A kinked hose could cut off your air supply. A faulty suit could flood in seconds, and the pressure at depth could crush a man. The bends, decompression sickness, was a constant threat, and many divers suffered paralysis or death. But the lure of adventure and the promise of riches kept them going. Some became legends, their exploits retold in newspapers and dime novels. But for every success story, there were countless tragedies lost to the depths. Contrast that with the matchstick girl of Victorian England. These young women and girls worked in match factories, dipping wooden sticks into white phosphorus, a chemical so toxic it could cause phossy jaw, a horrific condition where the jawbone would rot away. The pain was excruciating and the disfigurement permanent, yet the job was one of the few available to poor women, and the pay, though meager, was better than nothing. The factories were hot, crowded, and filled with poisonous fumes. Explosions were common and fires could sweep through the building in seconds. The matchstick girls eventually went on strike, demanding better conditions, but for decades their suffering was ignored by society. Let's not forget the night soil collector, a job that existed in cities around the world before modern plumbing. These workers collected human waste from cesspits and privies, hauling it away in the dead of night. The stench was overwhelming, and the risk of disease was ever present. Typhoid, cholera, and dysentery were constant threats, and the work was shunned by all but the most desperate. Yet without these collectors, cities would have drowned in their own filth. It was a job no one wanted, but everyone depended on. Now imagine yourself as a powder monkey aboard a warship during the Age of Sail. These were often boys as young as 10 or 12 years old, tasked with carrying gunpowder from the ship's magazine to the cannons during battle. The work was frantic and terrifying. One spark, one stray bullet, and the entire ship could explode. The noise was deafening, the air thick with smoke, and the decks slick with blood. Yet these boys played a crucial role in naval warfare, their bravery often going unrecognized. Let's shift to the tunnel digger, the men who carved out the London Underground in the 19th century.
Working deep below the city, they faced constant danger from cave-ins, flooding, and toxic gases. The tunnels were dark, cramped, and filled with the roar of machinery. Explosions were common and many workers were buried alive. Yet the promise of steady work drew thousands to the job. The London Underground became a marvel of engineering, but it was built on the backs and the graves of these forgotten men. Contrast these jobs with the fire lookout in the vast forests of North America. Alone in a tower for weeks or months at a time, these workers scanned the horizon for signs of smoke. The isolation was intense, and the threat of lightning strikes, wild animals, and forest fires was ever present. If a fire broke out, the lookout had to act fast, sometimes racing down the tower and through the woods to warn others. The job required vigilance, courage, and a willingness to face the unknown. Now, let's talk about the lumberjack in the great forests of Canada and the United States. Felling massive trees with axes and saws, these men worked in freezing cold, surrounded by falling timber and heavy machinery. Injuries were common, and death was always a possibility. Yet the camaraderie and the sense of adventure drew many to the job. The lumberjack became a symbol of rugged masculinity, but the reality was far harsher than the legends. Finally, consider the test pilot of the early jet age. These men climbed into experimental aircraft not knowing if the plane would fly or explode. The risks were enormous, but the rewards were great: fame, fortune, and a place in history. Many test pilots died in fiery crashes, pushing the limits of technology and human endurance. But their bravery paved the way for modern aviation. These are just a few of the incredibly dangerous jobs that people have done throughout history. Each one tells a story, not just of danger, but of courage, resilience, and the human spirit. They remind us that progress often comes at a cost, paid by those willing to risk everything. So, would you survive? Could you face the heights, the depths, the darkness, and the fire? Or would you turn away, seeking safety in the ordinary?
Let's step into the world of the medieval executioner. It's a job that's both feared and reviled, but in the Middle Ages, someone had to do it. Executioners were responsible for carrying out sentences of death by sword, axe, or even more gruesome methods. The work was physically and emotionally taxing. One slip of the blade could mean a botched execution, leading to public outrage or even retribution from the victim's family. Executioners were often ostracized, forced to live on the outskirts of society, yet their skills were in high demand. They were paid well, sometimes even given special privileges, but the psychological toll was immense. Imagine living with the knowledge that your hands ended dozens, maybe hundreds of lives. Would you have the stomach for it, or would the weight of your actions haunt you forever? Now, let's travel to the 19th century and meet the dynamite blaster. The men who built railroads, tunnels, and mines by handling one of the most volatile substances known to man. Before the invention of safer explosives, dynamite was unpredictable. A single spark, a jolt, or even a change in temperature could set it off. Blasters worked in teams, drilling holes into rock, packing them with dynamite, and then running for cover. Sometimes the charges didn't go off, forcing someone to approach and investigate. A job so dangerous it was called walking into the jaws of death. The pay was high, but so was the fatality rate. Yet, without these men, the modern world's infrastructure would never have been built. Contrast that with the leper colony caretaker. In an era when leprosy was misunderstood and feared, caretakers lived and worked among the afflicted, providing food, medicine, and comfort. The risk of infection was real, and the social stigma was crushing. Many caretakers were volunteers, missionaries, nuns, or doctors, driven by compassion or faith. They faced isolation, disease, and the heartbreak of watching patients suffer. Yet their work brought dignity and hope to those society had abandoned. Would you have the courage to serve in a place everyone else fled from? Now, let's not forget the stunt performer of early cinema. Before CGI and safety regulations, stuntmen and women risked life and limb for the perfect shot. They leapt from burning buildings, crashed cars, and fought wild animals, all for the camera. Injuries were common, and fatalities were not unheard of. The pay was decent, but the real reward was fame and the thrill of pushing the limits. Some became legends, their daring feats immortalized on film. But for every star, there were countless others who paid the ultimate price for a few moments of screen time. Now, imagine yourself as a mercury miner in the hills of Almadén, Spain, or the mountains of California. Mercury, also known as quicksilver, was essential for gold and silver mining, but exposure to its fumes caused tremors, madness, and death. Miners worked in cramped, poorly ventilated tunnels, breathing in toxic vapors day after day. The effects were devastating: memory loss, hallucinations, and a slow, painful decline. Yet the demand for mercury was insatiable, and the pay was enough to lure desperate men into the mines. Would you risk your mind and body for a chance at a better life? Let's shift to the bomb disposal expert of World War II. As cities were bombed, unexploded ordnance littered the streets. Bomb disposal teams were tasked with defusing these deadly devices, often with little more than a set of pliers and nerves of steel. The work required intense concentration, steady hands, and a willingness to face death every single day. One wrong move, and it was all over. Yet these experts saved countless lives, their heroism often going unrecognized. The pressure was immense, but the sense of purpose was unmatched. Contrast these high-stakes jobs with the pearl diver of Japan and the South Pacific. For centuries, divers, often women known as ama, plunged into the ocean without breathing apparatus, searching for oysters on the seafloor. The work was grueling: cold water, strong currents, and the constant threat of sharks or jellyfish. Dives could last several minutes, pushing the limits of human endurance. The rewards were great. A single pearl could change a family's fortunes, but the risks were ever present. Many divers suffered from decompression sickness or drowned in pursuit of treasure. Now, let's talk about the human computer, the women who calculated trajectories for rockets, artillery, and early space missions. Before electronic computers, these computers worked long hours performing complex math by hand. The pressure was intense. A single error could mean disaster. During World War II in the space race, their calculations determined the success or failure of missions. The work was mentally exhausting, and the stakes were life and death. Yet their contributions were often overlooked, their names lost to history. Finally, consider the elephant mahout in South and Southeast Asia. Mahouts tine and care for elephants, often forming a bond that lasts a lifetime. But working with these massive animals is incredibly dangerous. A startled or angry elephant can kill with a single blow. Mahouts face the risk of trampling, goring, or being crushed. Yet their expertise is essential for logging, tourism, and ceremonial events. The job requires patience, strength, and a deep understanding of animal behavior. Would you trust your life to a creature 10 times your size? Each of these jobs reveals a different facet of danger: physical, mental, and emotional. They challenge our assumptions about what it means to work, to survive, and to sacrifice. The people who took on these roles weren't reckless. They were resourceful, determined, and above all, human. Their stories remind us that behind every great achievement, there are those who risked everything to make it possible.
Let's journey to the windswept cliffs of 18th century Scotland, where the fowler risked life and limb to collect seabird eggs. These men would lower themselves down sheer rock faces, suspended by nothing but a rope, to reach nests perched above crashing waves. The eggs were a valuable source of food and income, but the danger was immense. A single slip, a frayed rope, or a sudden gust of wind could send a fowler plummeting to his death. The work required incredible balance, strength, and nerves of steel. Yet for many coastal families, it was a seasonal ritual, a test of courage, and a matter of survival. Would you trust your life to a rope and your own wits hundreds of feet above the sea? Now let's step into the world of the medieval tanner. Tanning leather was essential for making everything from shoes to armor, but the process was filthy and hazardous. Tanners worked with caustic chemicals like lime and urine, soaking animal hides in pits that reeked of decay. The fumes were toxic, and infections were common. Tanners were often shunned, forced to live on the outskirts of town, their trade considered unclean. Yet their work was vital to society. The job was a daily battle against disease and social stigma, but for many it was the only way to earn a living. Would you endure the filth and isolation for the sake of your family? Contrast that with the Victorian rat catcher. In the crowded cities of 19th century Europe, rats were everywhere, spreading disease and destroying food supplies. Rat catchers, often children, crawled through sewers and cellars, armed with little more than a stick and a sack. The work was dangerous. Bites, infections, and the risk of drowning in the filth were constant threats. Yet rat catchers were in high demand, their services essential for public health. Some even became minor celebrities, showing off their catches in public squares. The job was dirty, dangerous, and poorly paid, but it offered a rare chance for the poor to earn a living. Let's not forget the sailor on a whaling ship in the 19th century. Whaling was one of the most perilous jobs on the planet. Crews spent years at sea, facing storms, icebergs, and the constant threat of shipwreck. Hunting whales was a deadly dance. Small boats would approach the massive creatures, harpoons at the ready. A single flick of a whale's tail could smash a boat to splinters. If a whale was caught, the real danger began. Processing the carcass on a slippery, blood-soaked deck surrounded by razor-sharp tools and boiling vats of oil. Disease, malnutrition, and mutiny were ever-present dangers. Yet the promise of riches and adventure drew thousands to the trade. Would you brave the endless ocean for a chance at fortune? Now imagine yourself as a coal trapper, a job often given to children as young as 5 during the Industrial Revolution. Trappers sat alone in the darkness of the mines, opening and closing ventilation doors to control the flow of air. The work was monotonous, but the dangers were real. Explosions, cave-ins, and poisonous gases could strike at any moment. The isolation was crushing, and the pay was barely enough to keep a family fed. Yet, for many, it was the only alternative to starvation. The coal trappers' silent vigil kept the mines running, their sacrifices largely forgotten by history. Let's shift to the Renaissance alchemist. Alchemy was a blend of science, magic, and wishful thinking, but it was also incredibly dangerous. Alchemists experimented with mercury, arsenic, and other toxic substances, often in poorly ventilated rooms. Explosions, fires, and poisoning were common. Yet the dream of turning base metals into gold or discovering the elixir of life drove men to risk everything. Some alchemists became wealthy and famous, while others died penniless, victims of their own ambition. Would you gamble your life for a shot at immortality or untold riches? Contrast these ancient dangers with the early electrician at the dawn of the electric age. As cities lit up with the new miracle of electricity, someone had to install and maintain the wires. Early electricians worked with high-voltage lines, often without proper insulation or safety equipment. Electrocution was a constant threat, and many died in the line of duty. Yet the job was seen as cutting edge, a ticket to the future. The risks were high, but so were the rewards. Steady work, good pay, and the chance to be part of something revolutionary. Now let's talk about the mountain guide in the Alps or Himalayas. Guiding climbers up treacherous peaks, these men and women faced avalanches, crevasses, and sudden storms. The altitude could cause deadly sickness, and a single misstep could mean disaster for the entire group. Yet the guides' knowledge and courage made the impossible possible. They were the unsung heroes of every successful ascent, their lives a constant negotiation with danger. Would you lead others into the heart of the mountains, knowing that every decision could be a matter of life or death? Finally, consider the Chernobyl liquidator, the men and women who responded to the world's worst nuclear disaster in 1986. Armed with little more than shovels and makeshift protective gear, they worked to contain the radioactive fallout, often at the cost of their own lives. The radiation was invisible, but its effects were devastating: burns, sickness, and a slow, painful death. Yet, without the liquidator's sacrifice, the disaster could have been far worse. Their bravery saved millions, but many paid the ultimate price. Would you step into the unknown, risking everything for the greater good? Each of these jobs, from the cliffs of Scotland to the ruins of Chernobyl, reveals the extraordinary risks ordinary people have taken throughout history.
Their stories are a testament to human ingenuity, resilience, and the will to survive. They remind us that progress is built on the courage of those willing to face the unknown.
Let's bring our journey into the modern era, where danger still lurks in unexpected places. Consider the smoke jumper, those elite firefighters who parachute into remote wildfires. Their job is to land in the heart of chaos, surrounded by flames, falling trees, and choking smoke. Every jump is a leap into the unknown. The fire can change direction in seconds, trapping crews and cutting off escape routes. Equipment is heavy, the terrain is unforgiving, and the heat is relentless. Yet, smoke jumpers are driven by a sense of duty and camaraderie. They know that their actions can save entire communities, forests, and ecosystems. The training is brutal, the risks are obvious, but the pride in their work is unmatched. Would you leap from a plane into a wall of fire, knowing that your life, and the lives of others, depend on your skill and courage? Now, let's look at the underwater welder, a job that combines the dangers of deep-sea diving with the hazards of high-voltage electricity. These welders repair ships, oil rigs, and pipelines beneath the waves, often in total darkness. The risks are staggering: drowning, electric shock, decompression sickness, and even attacks from marine life. The pressure at depth can crush a human body, and a single mistake can be fatal. Yet the pay is among the highest in the world, and the sense of accomplishment is immense. Underwater welders are the unsung heroes of modern industry, keeping the world's infrastructure running in the most hostile environments imaginable. Contrast that with the Ebola health worker in recent outbreaks across Africa. These doctors, nurses, and volunteers face a virus with a mortality rate of up to 90%. They work in sweltering protective suits, caring for the sick and dying, often with limited resources and under constant threat of infection. The emotional toll is immense. Every patient could be the next victim, and every mistake could be fatal. Yet, these health workers are driven by compassion and a commitment to humanity. Their courage in the face of unimaginable danger is a testament to the best of what it means to be human. Let's not forget about the war correspondent, those journalists who risk everything to bring us the truth from the world's most dangerous places. They dodge bullets, bombs, and kidnappings to report from the front lines of conflict. The work is physically and emotionally exhausting, and the risks are ever present. Yet their stories shape our understanding of the world, shining a light on injustice and giving a voice to the voiceless. Would you trade safety for the chance to witness history as it happens, knowing that every assignment could be your last? Now, imagine yourself as a storm chaser, pursuing tornadoes and hurricanes in search of scientific data and dramatic footage. The thrill is undeniable, but so is the danger. Storm chasers drive into the heart of the world's most violent weather, facing flying debris, flash floods, and unpredictable winds. The line between science and spectacle is thin, and many have paid with their lives. Yet their work has saved countless others by improving our understanding of severe weather and early warning systems. Let's turn to the high-voltage power line worker, those who maintain the electrical grid that powers our modern lives. These workers climb towering pylons, often in extreme weather, to repair and replace high-voltage lines. The risk of electrocution is constant, and a fall from such heights is almost always fatal. Yet without their expertise, cities would go dark, hospitals would shut down, and society would grind to a halt. The job requires precision, courage, and a willingness to face danger head-on. Consider the bomb squad technician in today's world, diffusing improvised explosive devices in war zones and cities alike. The technology has advanced, but the stakes remain the same. One wrong move, and it's all over. These technicians rely on nerves of steel, meticulous training, and split-second decision-making. Their work saves lives, but the pressure is immense. Every call could be their last, yet they answer without hesitation. Now, let's reflect on the spacewalker, the astronauts who venture outside the safety of their spacecraft to repair satellites, build space stations, or conduct experiments. In the vacuum of space, a single tear in a suit or a collision with debris can be fatal. The isolation is profound, and the margin for error is razor thin. Yet spacewalkers push the boundaries of human achievement, exploring the final frontier and expanding our understanding of the universe. Their courage inspires generations, reminding us that the greatest rewards often come with the greatest risks. As we look back on all these jobs, from gladiators in ancient Rome to astronauts orbiting Earth, a pattern emerges. Danger is not just a test of physical strength or technical skill, it's a measure of the human spirit. Throughout history, people have faced unimaginable risks for the sake of survival, progress, and purpose. Some sought fortune, others fame, and many simply wanted to provide for their families. But all shared a willingness to confront fear, to endure hardship, and to push beyond the limits of what seemed possible. So, would you survive the most dangerous jobs in history? It's easy to say yes from the safety of the present, surrounded by modern comforts and protections. But the truth is, survival often depended on more than just bravery. It required adaptability, resilience, and sometimes sheer luck. The people who took on these jobs were not superheroes. They were ordinary individuals driven by extraordinary circumstances. Their stories are a reminder that every advance we enjoy today, every building, every invention, every leap forward was built on the risks taken by those who came before us. They faced the unknown so that we could live in a world of greater safety and opportunity. Their sacrifices deserve to be remembered, not just as cautionary tales, but as celebrations of human courage and ingenuity. As you go about your day, spare a thought for the gladiator, the miner, the smoke jumper, and the astronaut. Ask yourself, what risks would you be willing to take for a better life, for your family, or for the future? Would you have the courage to step into the arena, the mine, the fire, or the void? Or would you seek safety, knowing that someone, somewhere, is still risking everything to keep the world turning? In the end, the most dangerous jobs in history are not just about death and danger. They're about life, hope, and the relentless drive to survive and thrive.